appeal announcement, a legal notice. As information for our audience, if you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Board of Fair Commissioners today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the board's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact your own independent legal counsel. Okay, so welcome. June 9th. We're gathered here today. We have scheduled very important interviews that we're excited to get started. A lot of folks have been doing some hard work behind the scenes. Thank you very much to Aaron and Jane and everybody in HR that have received a large number of very qualified and interested applications, and they went through some phone interviews and some screening, and we have 6 folks to interview here in person, 3 today and 3 on Monday. So the special meeting rule, who's going to discuss that?
I will.
Okay.
Your rules provide for you to hold a special meeting, and you only can transact the business that is announced and on the agenda during your special meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and read the rules so that you all are familiar with that. A special meeting may be called by the chairperson or upon the written request of 3 or more commissioners. Written notification of the time, place, and purpose of the meeting shall be promptly delivered to each commissioner. At a special meeting, only the business designated as the sole purpose for the meeting may be transacted.
Okay, thank you.
Not a lot of rules.
No? All right, panel orientation. We've had a bit of an orientation about this process.
Okay.
And Jane Madden from Metro HR. Is there anything else?
No, thank you very much. In your notebooks, you have the applications and resumes and the questions, and we look forward to participating.
Okay. Want to...
Ready, the first candidate, I believe Ms. Schloesser is here. I'd like to present her to you if you all are ready.
We're ready.
Jane Madden, thank you. Welcome. So nice to meet you in person. Thank you for all your help. Thank you. They'll ask you some questions and have some conversation. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay.
Ready?
Table is slanted, so it's not just so you know.
Yes, if you all would introduce, if you all would introduce yourselves.
Sure.
Erin McAnally.
Hi, I'm Kenny Bird.
Ned Horton.
Caleb Hemmer.
I'm Bonna Johnson.
Very nice to meet all of you. My name is Susan Jones, and I'm attorney for the board.
I'm Jane Madden from HR.
Our board 16. You're welcome.
All right. Yeah, just for your information, we have some questions we'd like to ask of each candidate, and all of us will participate here a little bit. So we'll start with Aaron.
Thank you for being here. Please share an overview of your qualifications for the Director of Fairgrounds position, including your education, training experience, and other related qualifications. And also share with us some demonstrated qualities that make you the best candidate for this position.
Absolutely. As stated, my name is Schloesser. My education, I do have a double major. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology, natural science, and math. I did finish a master's degree at Tulane University in New Orleans, master's in public health.
There we go.
Good to go? Oh, much better, much better. As stated, I do have a master's degree in public health from Tulane University. I did that a little bit later in my career. I wanted to kind of get an idea of really what I wanted to do. And I chose public health because I felt it was a way that I could serve the community. I began my career with Milwaukee County 17 years ago, almost 1999 I was hired. And prior to that, I was in a nonprofit sector for 7 years. Once I transferred to government, I found that it was a chance for me to serve the community by doing that. Originally, I was in almost a caring role for our employees. I did employee safety and health. I did staff training. I was very instrumental in developing policy and procedure manuals, and that was very beneficial to staff. I had a very progressive career over in the Parks Department for my last 17 years to my current position as Chief of Administration and External Affairs. I've been in that position since January of 2012. I had the fortunate opportunity to be mentored about 18 months prior to taking that position from a fabulous mentor there at the department, and was exposed to many things. I think probably one of the best qualities and the best experiences that I had was the importance of partnership. And I believe that that is one of the things that I can bring here, and it is a strength of mine, is not only identifying but cultivating and fostering partnerships. And it's not always financial. It is advancing the mission through whatever mechanism that partnership can bring. Many times it is financial, which is great. It really does help diversify revenue and assist in maybe doing some things that the budget doesn't necessarily allow. But it has been a great opportunity in those partnerships. Not only that, with my external affairs, I work with a lot of community groups, grassroots, partnerships, friends groups, local advocacy groups, social service agencies. Also, I am responsible for several sections within my administrative division. That includes finance and budget, marketing and communications. I am the human resources liaison. They have centralized human resources now, where it used to be a part of our division. I have safety, security, and training. I have contracts and project management. I have development officer. I've got volunteer services and reception. So I have a very large section that is very service-based to our employees. I think that has been a strength to have an opportunity to cultivate workforce development and provide an environment for staff to grow and to provide field staff with support that they need to do their job to the best of their ability.
So I'll ask the next question. Just so you realize, this board has done this like a full 0 times. We've never had to do this process, so we're kind of all learning as well. But thanks for being here today. This question, I know you're obviously from elsewhere, and so this is going to be a question we ask of every candidate, though. But I don't know how much knowledge you've been able to form of the Fairgrounds, of the Nashville Fairgrounds. But I guess the question is, what knowledge do you have of the Fairgrounds? We've had kind of a long history here. Certainly, there's been, there was even controversy years ago about shutting us down or not, and then back and forth. And so there's been a lot of that, and I just want to know what your knowledge of the Fairgrounds or similar entity could be, that you've seen something similar with how, city officials or government officials had to work with a similar type of entity. You might want to share. But how do you see your role as the director participating in the future of the organization, given whatever knowledge you have of the Fairgrounds?
It's a great question, and I have to say it's one of the things that drew me to the position and to apply in the first place. It's because it was so similar to the experience that I'm having now. Mind you, I love my job. I'm relocating to Nashville and very excited to do so. I've chosen Nashville as my next home. And again, what drew me is that how similar the Fairgrounds is to my current agency. You've been around, I believe, the racetrack 1904. So you're similar age to the agency I'm representing now. And that history is incredibly important. I think that is very telling in a community when an entity can be, around in a vital part of the community for over 100 years. That said, I also know that there are significant challenges, deferred maintenance, infrastructure issues, maybe even a lack of a long-term vision because it's been back and forth a little bit over the last 6 years of are we staying, are we going? I think the community was very clear when they voted to save the fairgrounds and to keep it somewhat as is. That's encouraging to me. I think that we are at a very transitional point in the fairgrounds right now. Where are we going to go? And I want to be part of the decision-making process and the leadership team to bring us to that next stage for future generations. Because it's clear to me that the public is there and the support is there. It's just making it a little bit more sustainable and working on some of those deferred maintenance issues. That doesn't frighten me in the least. I definitely look at it as a challenge and an opportunity. That said, I was incredibly encouraged to read recently that the budget did include $12 million for capital and major maintenance, and obviously, very much needed. So I'm looking forward to that process, which I believe is going to be hopefully wrapping up relatively soon.
Thank you. Okay, next question. We've talked a little bit, the fairgrounds has a rich history, including what could be considered some polarized views of what should and should not be. People in the community, public officials, and others may approach you with their ideas, such as improvements and changes, what programs there should be. How would you handle these different requests, and how would you follow up?
I've had similar experiences. My experience has been with an executive branch of government and a legislative branch, and they don't always agree. I think the important thing is number one is what is the mission of the organization and what is the strategic direction. I do feel that any decision or any direction that happen has to support that ultimately. That said, I have a very firm opinion that it's community-based decision-making. When you get into possibly levy or capital investment, the community has got to weigh in. They're your support also, so I have always participated very heavily in community-based meetings, community input, but well-educated, going in, engaging staff, engaging planning, making sure all of the facts are in place to present to the community, and fiscally. It has to be a fiscally responsible decision. We're looking at a lot of efforts to be sustainable here, not just breaking even, but growing and thriving and being sustainable.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming all this way.
Very welcome, thanks.
Wanted to talk a little bit about, you spoke a little bit about your management experience, but wanted to talk a little bit more about your experience with leases and contracts and, kind of purchasing, procurement type issues and what things you've done with that.
As I mentioned earlier, one of the sections that I am responsible for is contracts and project management. Currently, we've managed about 250 contracts in my current position, and they vary between a vendor permit, which I would imagine is similar to maybe your flea market vendors, all the way up to multi-year, 99-year land leases. I'd have to say that they're very well managed. We've had to inherit, I guess, some old school contracts that we're looking to kind of revitalize and restructure a little bit to, again, to write them in a way that they support the mission of our organization and looking at revenue shares. But not only that, but infrastructure. That's always been a real key of ours. It's not necessarily just about the percentage of revenue that you're bringing in from contracts. It's what can they bring to the table elsewhere, whether it be in kind or whether it be some capital investments or major maintenance investments to go along with it. Because oftentimes that can go a really long way if they're willing to make an investment in a property that, then becomes, property of the fairgrounds and for future. So we've also looked at maintenance funds through our contracts, which are been incredibly helpful. Usually they're percentage of revenue based so that you have that slush fund in case any special projects come up that maybe the budget doesn't allow. And it kind of puts it on the responsibility of vendors coming in to help support that infrastructure need for the agency. Procurement-wise, we do have, my experience has been, having revenue accounting, budget building. Our expenditures have been upwards of $45 million. Personally, my own division budget is about $4.6 million. So big dollars that we've been working with. We are transitioning into an e-procurement system so that everything is done online. I did participate in a value stream mapping process to streamline procurement in Milwaukee County.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
It's value stream mapping. It is a technique similar to Six Sigma, Lean, continuous improvement, and it's the method that we used. But we did see that there was a challenge in procurement. It was taking a lot of time and a lot of effort, and so we really wanted to streamline. I did participate on that panel. We frequently go out for RFPs and RFIs. I have both participated as an author of such as well as on review panels. I've had the opportunity to testify regarding appeals that have occurred based on RFP decisions. So I think a vast understanding. I'm currently undergoing budget process, and I have been known to sit down and do a line by line, making sure money is where it needs to be in the accounts that it needs to be, and making sure everything is coded appropriately. I'm one of those people who believe firmly that in order to have a good business plan, you need to know where your money's going, and you do that by good coding and good accounting. So.
Hi, Laura. Obviously, one of the things we do here at the Fairgrounds is book a lot of events. Could you talk a little bit about your experience, if any, in event management or similar activities?
Absolutely. We work incredibly collaborative in my current agency, which has given me a lot of experience in big event management. I would say mostly what I have been doing lately is participating with our partners. We've got a lot of third-party agreements that require our support, and we want to support them, and I think that's incredibly important. If your partners are successful, you're successful. So we put a lot of effort, and I think it's a vital thing to invest in the marketing of your partners. So we have done things from ribbon cuttings. We always celebrate. We celebrate accomplishments, and that's very, very important for an organization to kind of give yourself a pat on the back when something good happens. All the way up to air shows where we are bringing in hundreds of thousands of visitors. My role in that a lot is with our marketing and communications team, with working with partners, collaborating with them. In such a big organization that I have been in, sometimes it is difficult to kind of navigate the county system. And so my role is to help break down those barriers and to make it easy to work with such a large entity and to make those events successful that way.
Thank you.
Fairgrounds has a very diverse constituency, and we've touched on this a little bit already, but how would you maintain and increase this participation, including creating a welcoming environment for all?
I think this is one of my favorite experiences that I've had in Milwaukee County. Milwaukee County is incredibly diverse, but we also have a huge segregation issue in the city. One of the investments that we have really concentrated on is our urban investment. And it's not necessarily just in infrastructure and building cool places for people to go, but it is actually getting into the neighborhoods and working with the social service agencies that are in those neighborhoods. And you'll see, I've got a little portfolio in here, and two of the projects that I found most satisfying that I was a part of was revitalization of two parks. They were very, very underutilized, very perceived as being very unsafe. They were in the heart of Milwaukee in a city environment. But I'll tell you, the one thing that was very encouraging is that the residents just did not want to lose their green space. They didn't want to lose their opportunity. So it's really getting in with agencies and residents and engaging them, because what I have found is that they desire so desperately to improve their living conditions and their experiences. And so again, it's part of one of those, what can I do to help break down those barriers and create opportunities for people to come? And we've done that. We have partnered with some philanthropic foundations that have underwritten some special programs for communities that they have invested in, underserved communities, and that has allowed access to venues that they wouldn't normally visit. In addition, we have worked with Workforce Investment Board in getting maybe underserved youth jobs, which I think is incredibly important, and you can get those oftentimes underwritten, so you can add staff, which is always helpful, but then provide really crucial job experience for kids.
I think you've honestly, my next question deals with what size of the budget have you managed? I think what are some creative ways to get some creative revenue that you've dealt with in dealing with budget issues? And I think you've addressed some of that, but if you can touch on what kind of budget numbers you've dealt with before. But also, I'm just curious, have you been able to tour the fairgrounds? Have you been able to go on a tour here?
I snuck in here yesterday. I did. I drove and
we need to make sure that happens.
Yeah, I didn't want to dive too far in, didn't want to, get places where I shouldn't have been. But yes, I did come here yesterday and took a little driving tour around. So it was really great to see in person.
This afternoon that you get.
Yeah. Well, thank you. To answer just to dive in a little bit more into the budget, I think county governments, local governments, they struggle. They struggle with balancing not being a mandated service with, how we work in Milwaukee County is that the state mandates services that the county has to provide, but doesn't necessarily provide all the resources. And so, we fight. We fight for our share, and it's not often enough to account for inflation or cost of living or whatever. So we have to come up with really unique ways to make up the difference. And our team has been fabulous at coming up with very diversified revenue sources, creative internal revenue, new initiatives, new programs, new services that have been really, really successful. That said, my role has a tendency to be has been more towards identifying those partners, identifying foundations, grants. I've written many, many grants. I write grants and talk to people who you wouldn't normally go to for grants. One of my most successful endeavors was an investment by a major brewery in Milwaukee. Not once, but twice. We've gotten $1 million. Not once, but twice, yes. 2 $500,000 donations. It's been a 10-year process, and it's been very, very important because not everybody likes to give money for operations. It's usually a special project or maybe a name on a building, but to get people to look at what you do and support your operational budget has been huge, and that's what that grant was. And it's probably one of my, I guess, more proud moments is to secure that grant and have that relationship with such a pivotal corporation in Milwaukee.
Let me just a quick little follow-up. It's a kind of a broad question, but what do you see as the future of the Nashville Fairgrounds if you become director here?
You know, I would like to say that it would be the place to go. You know, that it is going to offer something incredibly unique. You know, what I found in Milwaukee is that we're known for beer, sausage, and cheese, and festivals. And I believe that, you know, being from the outside, what do people associate Nashville with? Music. That's what I associate, Nashville with as I come in as a newcomer. So you have an opportunity there. You either embrace that and maybe come up with a really unique experience around that the fairgrounds could piggyback on and to leverage, or you can come up with something completely unique that Nashvillians have never seen before. And so I think we have a really fabulous opportunity with the capital investment that's coming in, the public support. You know, one of my questions back to you later is going to be how the political support looks here for the fairgrounds, because we would need that support as well. But I think there's incredible opportunity to grow to the point where we're not only going to be sustainable, but we're going to pull a mighty good profit.
Thanks. Okay. Have you had experience with media and press on controversial issues? And if so, please give us an example.
I have a few times. We've been very fortunate that many of us have taken the role. We haven't had a spokesperson for quite a while, and so a lot of us have taken the roles based on our experience and based on subject matter to be the contact for the media. I'm very comfortable in front of a camera, but I also make it a point to reach out and become partners with the media. And I found that very, very helpful. Oftentimes, I find that when you do that, they seek you out, and you don't necessarily need to advertise so much because you've become the story. And I would hope that I would have the opportunity to help do that for the fairgrounds. That said, a couple, controversial issues. I believe I mentioned it during the first round. We had been placed on the Dirty Beaches list in Milwaukee, and it was definitely not a list that you wanted to be on. We had an environment that was, had some E. coli contamination, and it just was not a list that you wanted to be on. But we tackled it. I went out there, stood right on the beach, and yes, you admit, you address, and then you talk about the opportunities. You redirect, you talk about what your next steps are, what your commitment is to making it better, and what your plan is for moving forward. It can be incredibly difficult to handle controversial subjects, but it's being confident in your direction, and as well as unfortunately some employee issues. We had an unfortunate issue where we had a very public issue with an employee that we had to deal with, and it reflects poorly, and I think it just shows that professionalism and ethics and respect for your positions and for the work that you do has to shine through.
I've got a follow-up. My background's actually in journalism and PR, so this question interested me a lot. You talked about that Dirty Beach story, which I actually found online. Can you just sort of walk us through, your media strategy when that phone call came in from the reporter? Did you put together your bullet points, or did you bring staff together to put together your bullet points? What's your thought process, and what's the process within your agency?
I was very fortunate in that situation, in that was one of the projects that I had secured that $500,000 grant for. And so I was very well versed in the subject matter. But yes, I do. I always call the reporters first and talk it over with them ahead of time. I get a feel for what types of questions they're going to ask. I, always be prepared for the unknown, because I get that. But usually I just call the reporter and say, I'm very willing to help. Can we talk a little bit about, what you're looking for, what content you're looking for? That way, if they're, I never like going into one of those things blind, so it does allow me the opportunity to do a little background research in the event that I want to brush up on facts. But I do. I sit down and I write out bullet points. I fact check. Meet with marketing and communications. That's always a key part. I'm certainly not adverse to a little bit of coaching and going in, and just be comfortable, touch base with them on site, and go for it.
Thank you.
As the director here, you'd be obviously managing a small staff, a support staff, and likely would be hiring and firing people over your course of your tenure if you were to be the director. I'm just kind of curious about your philosophy and your, I guess, management and leadership style, and also talk about your direct reports. I saw you had, from your resume, you had a number of direct reports, and just kind of.
Yes, I do. I have 15 to 17 direct reports, and then I've got probably double that for seasonal staff. So our FTE count, is a little bit lower in my division, but we've got agency-wide about 206 employees, and about 1,000 seasonals during the summer, so quite large there. I've had the fortunate and unfortunate, I guess, experience to do a lot of interviewing. Currently interviewing to replace myself, which has been quite the experience, and also several management positions that have transitioned in the company. I do like to participate in interview panels. Pride myself actually on my team, and I look for people who are collaborative, experienced, professional, just willing to go above and beyond. People who are creative, not afraid to take risks, innovative. I have a tendency to work really well with people who aren't necessarily status quo, that like to kind of challenge the norm. I encourage my staff to, but I have their back when they do. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes you take risks and it doesn't work, but that's okay. We learn. But I will always have their back as we move forward. I think that is probably one of my main focuses. Is I'm very loyal to my staff. I invest in my staff to the best of my ability. I don't always have the ability to compensate them financially for their work. So I do try to find other ways, and I take great pride in giving, thoughtful reviews and constant touch bases. I have open door policy with my staff. So, I'd like to say my staff says good things about me.
You've sort of made reference to the fact that you recognize that, we're all working in sort of a political environment here with different interests. Can you talk about your work with boards and commissions and what your role was, and sort of just navigating, as you said, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and different stakeholders in the community?
Absolutely. That is one of the primary responsibilities of my current position. I am the primary liaison with both the county executive and the county board. We currently have 18 county supervisors, and so they are often pulling in different or similar directions depending on the needs of their district. I do represent the department and have presented policy items for advancement through both our Parks Committee, which is our standing committee for our agency, for our department, as well as finance, audit, and personnel. So we will take personnel issues, changes, any fund transfers or budget initiatives due to contracts through Finance Committee, and I handle those independently for our department. I think sometimes it can be a challenge. I have faced political divide, that is a challenge, I think, that we have to try to overcome. My goal is always collaboration to try to get everyone pulling in the same direction. We cannot be successful unless we all are. We're not always all going to agree. In my current position, I administer policy. I don't set policy. It's not our role. I have an opinion, and I will do my homework, and I will freely share that opinion, and especially as to how it affects the direction of the fairgrounds strategically, financial impacts of decisions. But I would definitely say that I have a tremendous amount of experience with that. I've written legislation, I've written reports, resolutions, fiscal notes for the board, and they're all open meetings. They are recorded as yours are. So it's been a great learning process, but one that affords me an opportunity to start to get to know our legislators and what their needs and desires are for their districts that they represent.
How many years have you been in sort of that liaison position?
About 5 years.
When you talked about bringing everybody together to have a collaborative approach, what are you actually doing? What are the steps that you are taking? What is that process to bring everybody together to have that unified vision?
If I have a project that affects a division or a district within Milwaukee County, I'll pick up the phone. I just like that personal communication. I'll give you an example. We've had some challenges recently with potentially inappropriate behavior, I guess, at one of our basketball facilities, at one of our parks, and the residents had reached out to us directly saying, something's got to be done. Well, my first call is, all right, let's do this together, because the only way we're going to solve this problem is working together. So my first call was to the county exec's office saying, do you have a representative that can help me through this process? This is my plan. I'd like to rally the community leaders and get together and figure out how we're going to solve this problem. Our approach was definitely not to take away a recreational activity from the community because of a few bad eggs. So it was getting a representative to help, calling the county supervisor, getting them involved, because then your solution, you go in with a plan, and your solution is going to be that much easier to implement when you have that buy-in from the very, very beginning. I find it very difficult to manage those types of issues when I am coming in from the backside. And when people feel blindsided, I have found it doesn't work.
We'll ask this of everyone, but do you have any experience with, we have a racetrack here. Do you have any experience in Milwaukee with a racetrack or dealing with a racetrack facility or anything like that?
Our state fair has the Milwaukee Mile, so we do have a racetrack here. My understanding is that your racetrack is under a lease. And with that, we have many leases or long-term management agreements that are managed via an agreement like that. And so I have very relevant experience managing contracts of that magnitude, and it takes as much commitment to manage contracts and monitor compliance and making sure that the best interest of the entity is being served by that contract. So racetrack, I've never driven a race car on one. I hope to. But I think it's the agreement. It's your partner. It's that great communication and that open door that you have to have with your partner, so that you are all going towards that common goal.
So when are you moving to Nashville?
I hope to move in the next month or two.
Interviewing your own replacement there, when,
Yes.
is there a timeline for that process?
It's a moving target. You know, it's a great opportunity for me to replace. I've known that we were moving here since about September of 2015. So it's been a process, you know, to sell houses and such. But we've known we're moving to Nashville for a while. We had about 5 states that we could choose to live in, and we've chosen this place as our home. And I'm very excited. From what I've seen of it so far, I'm really, really excited to move here.
Can we just do some follow-up stuff here? Okay, so just for informational for you, I'm sure you understand this, but you know, I don't know how you're set up now. You're not managed by a board, really. You're kind of head of the department, correct? In your position now. So, you know, the role you would be filling is what Ken is doing now, and so the board, you know, run the facility and set the policy. And I listened to what you were talking about, that, you know, I don't set policy, I just administer, and I think that would be a little bit about what goes on here. But do you have, it would be a little bit of a different role, I think, of that, you know, a board manages you and you also have to manage staff. And so can you explain to us a little bit about being able to work with, you know, kind of 5 bosses to some degree, even though we collectively come together and make a decision about what to do, and then that's kind of given down to you while you're having to do the groundwork, you know, with the staff, but also dealing with vendors, knowing that we set the sort of parameters of that. Would you feel comfortable in that kind of setup?
Absolutely. I always feel like I have a million bosses, and that's the population of Milwaukee County. So, you know, I'm accountable to the taxpayers. But that said, I also feel like I have a very similar setup. Yes, I might not be directly managed by a Parks Commission currently, but I do have, you know, a hierarchy in our facility. My boss, my direct boss, the director, and we have the county executive and his staff, which are pivotal to our direction as a department and where we fit within Milwaukee County, as well as, you know, the Board of Supervisors. There's 18 elected officials that have very, very, you know, clear needs in their district, and I'm there to help coordinate that, their needs with our strategic direction within our financial, you know, situations. So I do feel it's remarkably similar.
Can I follow up with more on this? Okay, so another thing that's on my mind that I want to make sure I ask of everyone, you know, we have had, if you've read the news about us and listened, you know, we have had some instances. Nashville is a very growing city with a diverse, kind of follows up with a question about diversity. We have a very diverse city, and more people are coming here from all types of backgrounds, which is a great thing for Nashville. We've had some instances of issues with some of the events or things that happen here that then we get concerned or sending some unwelcoming messages, and we try to address that. Have you had to deal with any of that? I'm assuming dealing with parks, dealing with, you know, frankly, unwanted messages sometimes that occur that you want to make sure that doesn't send an unwelcoming message to the growing population in the city. Have you dealt with instances like that?
I have, but can you describe to me a little bit about where are the unwelcoming messages coming from?
Well, we had issues on, you know, we've had some vendors that had Confederate flags, and that became an issue, or issues on a religion matter where they've sold some sort of gear that just wasn't appropriate. I know that the local councilman here had an issue with something dealing with Native Americans, where like at a flea market or something, there was something, just one of the vendors, you know, not everybody. And so we've tried to always address that we have a very open and family friendly, we want everyone to feel welcome here. And I just know, I think that probably is something that dealing with parks, you have to have the two-step, have to deal with the two-sided coin there of, you know, First Amendment rights and people to do things as a public facility, but also trying to make sure you show an open and welcoming environment for everybody. And I just want to make sure that that's sort of something that you will not, be shy about addressing or you've had to deal with before.
That's a very good point. And yes, we have frequently. Milwaukee is the city of festivals. We have ethnic festivals on much of our property. That said, we've had a recent experience where, we felt that one of the ethnic festivals was outgrowing its footprint, and that due to that there might be some safety issues. And so it was navigating, yes, we want you, but you're maybe outgrowing your footprint. Can we help you find something else, or what can we do? And it's really sitting down with the event organizers, setting clear expectations, clearly communicating challenges or fears even on the way things are going. But it takes sitting down and collaborating and open discussion and being incredibly transparent and honest of how you can work together. Yeah, sometimes those are really uncomfortable, but again, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't sit down and talk to people. And I found, that's been my role a lot of times, is trying to navigate those relationships and finding a way to yes.
Laura, would you mind for me just pronounce your last name?
Schloesser.
Schloesser.
Forget the O.
All right. All right.
So, you've talked about your work in county government and obviously how that could translate to, working in this metropolitan government. But you mentioned you had a master's in public health. And so this type of job would be a departure from that background. Have you thought about ways that you could still feel fulfilled in that background in public health if you took on a job like this one?
Absolutely, because it serves the community, and that's really the basis of public health. I'm a self-admitted math and science geek, love it, and that kind of served that need for me. But what I learned through my degree was half MBA and half very technical. And while I really appreciated the MBA and the management classes that I had when I went through graduate school. And what I have found that brings me most fulfillment is seriously serving the community. I've chosen to do it through government, through policy advancement, through quality of life. And isn't that what this is? It's what the parks are. It's to bring people in, give them experiences. Allow them to come into a place where they can maybe let work go for a little bit and provide them with an outlet. That's what we do. It's no different here than in Parks and Recreation. It's providing opportunities and experiences for people. Maybe there's some added benefit that we can do some education. We can do, other things to invest in the community. But that said, that's kind of the basis of what we do. And I feel it's no different. And that's the career path I've chosen. And I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, do you have any questions for us or anything that we haven't covered that
I do.
you'd like
I want to
bring
be
up?
respectful of your time as well. But I do have a couple if I can.
Don't ask Kenny. Okay?
Short answers.
So we touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to dive into a little bit more detail. In my first round of interviews, one of the questions that I had asked the panel was what the political tolerance was for innovation and diversified revenue. It can kind of be hit and miss where I'm at now, and I was told it was quite high at this point. And so my question is, what do you see as maybe the low-hanging fruit for the new executive director? And what I mean by that is Nashville ripe for philanthropy, for donations, for grants, or maybe an internal initiative for revenue diversification or new initiatives? What's that low-hanging fruit?
You say political tolerance?
Tolerance.
Oxymoron. Somebody you want to
think, just speaking, I can only speak for myself, but I think definitely we are very open to any and all new ideas and new approaches. I'm personally very much a creative person, and thinking outside of the box and getting people to collaborate in different ways. And I think, you pointed out the Save the Fairgrounds, the referendum, and there is a base of support here that wants to see good and great things happen at this facility. So we are definitely open to, and I think not only the community, but the leadership in Metro government would be open to new ways to improve things here, bring other partnerships into the fold, get other groups organized and involved. There's so much opportunity here. The history has been really rich. We're sitting here in the middle of the CMA festival, which was known as Fanfare at one point, which was here on these grounds. So there's so much that could come back. There's so much new and different things that we could be doing. So I wouldn't say you're going to be working in a box and don't go outside this or that. Anything that you can think of, I'm sure we can have open dialogue about and try to pursue.
I mean, look, I want to be very open and honest in these type of questions. I think the good and the bad and the ugly of it all is that this board is very open to innovative and new ideas. And in fact, I think this board, you don't have to come here to too many meetings or see the revenue numbers and what we go through all the time for us to have a major consensus that things can't keep happening the same as it's happened for years. That we have to evolve and change. Keep a lot of the good stuff and traditions, but also evolve and change, and we have new events and things we want to do. And, there is some political pushback sometimes to that. There is the charter amendment that happened during the referendum that, I personally think gets thrown around by certain interests when it benefits them and, not when it doesn't. And so there is that tug, but that's going to be there. But we have to address it and confront it. And I think there is a new political will. There's a new council now, a new mayor. And I think that, there is a new opening to understanding that we have to grow this place in the right way. Not only should we, but we have to. I mean, we have to do that.
I hesitate to call it low-hanging fruit because it's like I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, if you will. But I do think that there is potential for a sort of perfect storm of more political tolerance, of more political interest, of community interest, of a newfound. I'm a new board member. We're excited. Everybody's got a lot of energy moving forward, and at the same time, the city's growing massively. So there are new businesses coming to town, new people who haven't experienced the divisiveness of this property. So it's kind of like, and a lot of organizations that I think, if the property was running totally smoothly and in the right direction, would become more involved. So I think in terms of sponsorships or like what you were talking about with the brewery, I think that there's a ton of potential there of people just. Giving time and money and attention to the property based on all of those things sort of coming together.
The music thing that you brought up is it's a weird box to unlock here at the Fairgrounds because it's Nashville, we're clearly music, but there's tons of venues for a certain type of music event, right? And then there's the Bridgestone Arena, or say Bonnaroo, whatever, that has these huge events that we don't really compete against. And so the music has changed a little bit where, if you want to get a big act here to go to the racetrack and do that, you have to, the type of money you have to put out to get that music, that big name, is changed in the past 10 years. And you've got to really dole out a lot of money to do that. So then if you go down to kind of newer acts or whatever, sort of below that level, you're competing with tons of venues here in Nashville that may be even more suitable. So it is a tougher sort of nut to crack than you think on that, but it's one that we are trying and need to address.
I think in terms of low-hanging fruit, hopefully capitalizing on this new investment. Aaron, public interest in the property that, you know, the mayor is going to be putting forward, as well as revenue creation opportunities. You do have a lot of autonomy. The board has a lot of autonomy per the charter on things that we can do here, especially in terms of amusement and you know, like events that we're doing. And so capitalizing that, sponsorships, as you mentioned, philanthropy. Nashville, Middle Tennessee is a huge philanthropy community. I saw a story the other day, talked about how high, in terms of even political giving, philanthropy, nonprofits, it's very, very large. So there's a lot of, in corporate too, so there's a lot of opportunity in that.
The Milwaukee-style beer and cheese festival, some low-hanging fruit we could.
I like beer and cheese.
I can bring that here. I can bring that here.
Don't leave out
So what did
sausage.
you say were the beer?
Beer, sausage, and cheese.
Yeah, so
I mean,
sausage would be replaced with barbecue, right?
Definition of
We
low-hanging
can
fruit.
do barbecue, music.
Yeah.
I also think we'd be remiss not to mention our flea market, because we have an
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal flea market, and I believe it's the 6th biggest in the country at this point, and there's a lot of potential to grow that.
More than
Vendor-
half our revenues, yeah.
Definitely, and vendors, like, you know, national vendors are paying attention to this flea market.
Am I to understand, the flea market is solely run by staff here at the fairgrounds, correct?
Yes.
Whereas, you know, the racetrack is leased, but that is truly a fairgrounds event. Well, then something certainly to be proud of, and how do we, you know, capitalize on that passion and investment that people have made to make that successful?
Option is, you know, maybe we have more weekends. It's all about low-hanging fruit. Maybe we convince them to do some more weekends.
Anything else you wanted to cover about yourself that didn't come up, or anything you wanted to leave us with?
You know, you answered so many of my questions. I did, of course, have a question on the relationship between, you know, you commissioners and this position, and how that relationship works, but I think you've covered that.
A
You
lot
know,
of phone calls. You get a lot of phone calls.
oh, very good.
Well, it's, you know,
In a good way.
we're not allowed to talk to each
Right.
other about anything. So
But I think
you have to deal with us individually, you know, unless we have a public meeting like this.
But I think it's speaking to what you were talking about. It's like picking up the phone. I feel very comfortable speaking to Mr. Sanders and or to negotiate any conflict or any issues.
And we try to divide, you know, typically we would divide, like Aaron graciously agreed to spearhead this particular process for the executive director position hiring. But there's a lot of different things like that come up. And one board member might be your point of liaison as things come together and they get presented at a board meeting. And there's lots of discussion over several months typically. So it doesn't always move at the speed of light, but you know, we get things done. So.
Very good. Just one other quick question. I was very pleased and very curious about as part of the $12 million, the $3 million for soccer fields in partnership with the Parks Department. Tell me a little bit about that, and is that supposed to be a revenue generator for the fairgrounds or for parks? Or we haven't worked that out
Yeah, that
yet.
all has to be worked out.
Okay.
And I think it's really, there's a big need for facilities here for soccer. This came up years ago. This was originally green-lighted 6 or 7 years ago, I think, and then put on hold. So it circled back around. But yeah, the community using the facility. So I just offhand, I don't see it as necessarily a revenue generator, but more community involvement, community use of the facility here.
Maybe, but soccer's going nowhere. We know that. That's exactly a great example of something that's going to take off. I mean,
Yeah.
without any doubt. The mayor had said, you know, we got to be ready.
And there's a couple other groups looking to put some levels of professional soccer into the town here, and fan base for that. So there are, I think, at those higher levels, opportunity for the facility to participate as a revenue generator with soccer. But I think this is more community, you know, more parks, a collaboration with parks to serve the need for soccer fields. So.
I'm all for collaboration, so thank you.
We have one more, I think we have a few more minutes, is that okay? I was just kind of curious with you not being local and having the local knowledge history that a lot of the other interviewees would have. What kind of would you do your first 90 days for the Fairgrounds if you were the director, as well as to get up to speed?
Listen, learn, and meet. Honestly, I'm not one to go in like a bull in a china shop and, oh, we need to do this new. It's a lot of learning. It's meeting staff. It's learning what they do and how they do it. Speaking with all of you, of course, is going to be incredibly important in the first 90 days. And meeting people. I need to get out in the community. I've been following, I've subscribed to a couple newspapers, and I've been keeping up on that over the last 6 months just for that, because I'm incredibly interested in what happens in the city that I live in beyond, my work, of course. So, it's getting out there, getting down here. I plan on traveling down here several times before my move to get a feel for the city. And, it reminds me of Milwaukee, to be honest with you. I feel very comfortable here already, but really it's listening, learning, and meeting people is the key. Mind you, I have no doubt that there's going to be some sense of urgency with things. This $12 million is going to be a huge project, this future vision, strategic planning, direction, where are we going in the next 5 years? I imagine that all that needs to get done. And so, my plan would be to establish that, timeline of a work plan to say, what can my deliverables be to you in the next 6 months, next 12 months? So that's my plan.
Yeah, I think we have to wrap up. Thank you so much. We appreciate
I'm
it.
going to leave these with you. So in here is just another copy of my resume. I do have a letter of recommendation from one of our amazing partners, as well as just some portfolio sheets and my references.
Thank you, Laura.